Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning and nothing hurts. Not your knees, not your back, not your memories, not your thoughts. Your heart doesn't race with silent anxieties. You don't flinch when you check your messages. You don't dread the mirror. You don't scroll past other people's lives, feeling like an accidental observer in your own. Instead, you wake up and you exist fully, without needing to fix anything, without the war raging in your head. And for the first time in your life, you feel the strangest, most unfamiliar sensation. You are not suffering. But then, a more haunting question arrives. What would be left of you if your suffering disappeared? Because whether you admit it or not, your pain is not just something you carry. It's something you cling to. The shame, the regret, the wounds. They've been with you so long they've become part of your spine. You wear them like armor, like proof that you've lived. But what if they're not armor? What if they're a cage? Here's the paradox no one wants to confront. We claim to want peace, but we are terrified of what peace might take from us. We say we want healing, but we hoard our pain like currency. We ask for freedom, but only the kind that doesn't demand we let go of our chains. You say you want to stop suffering, but do you really? Would you know who you were without it? Somewhere along the path of growing up, no, of surviving, you started using suffering as an identity. Pain became a map, a compass, a friend. Because at least when you were hurting, you felt something real. And in a world that numbs you with distractions, real started to feel rare. But here's the question I need you to hold. What if the deepest suffering you feel isn't from the pain itself, but from the story you've built around it? What if pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional? What if your suffering doesn't come from what happened to you, but from the meaning you attach to what happened? And here's where things get darker. If someone offered you 25 minutes, a single guided journey into a place so quiet and so honest that your suffering could dissolve forever, would you take it? Even if it meant letting go of the one thing that makes you feel like you? Because that's the trap, isn't it? The ego doesn't fear suffering. It fears irrelevance. If your identity was built through wounds and wars, then peace feels like annihilation. A life without struggle sounds almost lifeless, almost fake. But what if you've misunderstood the assignment? What if the goal of life isn't to suffer nobly, but to see clearly? What if the only reason you suffer is because you're asleep in a dream made of false beliefs? You were told suffering makes you strong, but maybe strength isn't the ability to endure torment. Maybe it's the ability to end it. You were told healing takes years, but maybe it just takes one unbearable moment of truth. You were told to find yourself, but what if what you call yourself is just a collection of inherited fears and survival mechanisms? So let's ask something dangerous. What if you're not here to endure suffering? What if you're here to transcend it, not by denying it, not by burying it, but by stepping so far beyond it that it has no language left to reach you? Let that linger for a moment. You've been carrying suffering like it's your responsibility. You've worn it like a medal. You've used it to prove your worth, to explain your failures, to justify your caution. You've used it as a reason not to leap, not to trust, not to hope. But suffering is not noble when it becomes your excuse for playing small. There's a quiet revolution waiting for you. Not in the next achievement, not in the next apology, not in another 10 years of analyzing your past. It's waiting in a place you've been avoiding your whole life. Here, now, you. But you're going to have to make a choice. You can keep feeding your pain, refining your identity around it, building shrines to your struggles, or you can let it all burn. Give me 25 minutes, and I won't give you a fantasy. I won't sell you false hope or spiritual fluff, but I will offer you this, a confrontation so honest, so raw, that it might just destroy everything that ever made you suffer. Are you ready for that? Because the truth, the real truth, isn't comforting. It doesn't soothe. It severs. It cuts away what's false. It kills illusions. And if you let it, it will set you free. Now, let's ask the question most people never dare to face. Why do we suffer at all? Let's not lie to ourselves. You don't suffer because life is hard. You suffer because of the way you interpret what life gives you. And that interpretation is not born from clarity, but from distortion. A distortion so old, so deeply embedded in your mind, that you mistake it for truth. Here's the real problem, and it's far more disturbing than anyone likes to admit. You think you are your pain. You think you are your past. You think the wound is your identity. You think your suffering is evidence that you are real, but it's not. It's just the loudest voice in the room. And that voice, the one whispering, "You're not enough. You'll never be safe. Everyone leaves." It wasn't born from wisdom. It was born from fear. Let's go back, way back, before language, before memory, before thought. There was just presence. You were unburdened, undivided, alive. And then, slowly, brick by brick, your mind began building a structure to make sense of the world. And in doing so, it created you, or rather, the version of you that could survive. Not the real you, not the limitless awareness, but the frightened construct that could navigate pain and avoid punishment. That version, that's the one you've been living through. A psychological mask worn for so long you forgot you put it on. This is the hidden problem. You've confused the mask for the face. You've mistaken the trauma response for the truth. And so every thought you think, every judgment, every fear, every impulse to control is filtered through a psyche that was shaped by suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "Man is the sick animal," but he wasn't insulting you. He was diagnosing you. Human consciousness is the only form of life that tries to explain its own pain by constructing endless narratives around it. Animals hurt. They feel pain, but they don't suffer. Only humans turn pain into identity. Only humans turn memory into self. Only humans write meaning onto tragedy and then weep over the ink. Arthur Schopenhauer went even further. He believed desire was a form of suffering itself. To want something is to declare that you do not already have it, which means every hope, every ambition, every dream is, at its core, a confession of lack. And if you live from that space, from a belief in lack, then even when you succeed, you're still afraid. Afraid it won't last. Afraid it wasn't enough. Afraid of slipping back into the pain you never actually left, because it lives in your perception, not your circumstances. Now here's where the trap gets tighter. Society doesn't just accept your suffering. It monetizes it. You are taught, very young, that your pain is a problem you can fix. Buy this, learn that, work harder, meditate longer, heal more. But if you look closely, there's a silent message beneath every solution. You are not okay until you're over your trauma, until you're spiritually evolved, until you're emotionally bulletproof, until you've cleaned up the entire mess of your existence. And so, the self-help industry, the spiritual scene, even your closest relationships, all keep you locked in the same cage, just decorated differently. A prettier prison is still a prison. The deeper truth, you suffer because you've internalized a core lie, that your value is conditional, that your peace must be earned, that your identity is built from survival. But survival isn't living, it's coping. And coping becomes a full-time job when you're constantly trying to fix a self that was never broken, only misidentified. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." But here's the twist. You didn't make yourself. Your pain made you. Your suffering wrote the blueprint, and your ego carried it out. Now pause. Really feel this. That quiet shame you've always carried? That low-frequency dread in your gut? That compulsion to be better, do more, prove your worth? None of that is you. It's just your protective mechanisms outdated and on autopilot. They were useful once, but now they're driving you in circles through the fog, calling it life. So how does this affect your day-to-day existence? Simple. Every time you think you're making a free choice, you're not. You're reacting. Reacting from wounds. Reacting from childhood. Reacting from inherited beliefs you never examined. And the scariest part? It feels normal, but normal doesn't mean natural. It means conditioned. You've been conditioned to suffer. Conditioned to self-abandon. Conditioned to think that life must be a series of uphill battles, followed by brief, unsatisfying relief. You've been taught that peace is the reward at the end of the war. But what if peace was never on the other side of the war? What if peace is what remains when you stop fighting? Not the world, not your past, but your own false self. Because until you see how your suffering has been self-perpetuated, not in a blameful way, but in a deeply human way, you'll keep living in a dream of your own making. A dream stitched from fear, shame, control, and memory. It's time to wake up, because something is coming. A truth so piercing, so clean, it will burn away everything false and show you the cost of continuing to live in illusion. So before you can reclaim your life, before you can stop suffering, you must finally see what your suffering has been quietly creating. You think you've just been suffering, but suffering is never passive. It builds, it distorts, it infects the very way you experience reality. Your suffering has shaped your perception of yourself, of others, of the world. It colors every conversation. It whispers behind every relationship. It manipulates every decision you think you made freely. And the most terrifying part, you don't even realize it's happening. Because suffering doesn't just hurt, it rewires. Your brain is not a neutral machine. It's a sculptor that molds itself around the emotions you feed it. This is neuroplasticity. Your thoughts, over time, become your biology. Pain leaves trails. Fear leaves grooves, and the more you rehearse the story of your suffering, the more deeply those neural paths are carved. Until you don't just feel pain, you become it. You mistake your trauma response for your personality, your emotional walls for wisdom, your pessimism for realism. But these are not truths, they're adaptations. You didn't grow up cautious, you learned to be. You weren't born bitter, you became bitter. Because it felt safer than vulnerable. And now, suffering has calcified into identity. This is the first unseen consequence. The false self. A persona stitched together from survival tactics. A character you perform every day just to feel functional. But under the performance, a silent scream. This isn't who I really am. The second consequence is even darker. Distorté désir. When you suffer long enough, you stop reaching for what you want. Not because you don't want things, but because desire becomes dangerous. You don't fantasize about love, freedom, joy. You fantasize about relief. There's a difference. Desire is expansive. Suffering makes it constrictive. You no longer dream, you negotiate. You don't ask, what lights me up? You ask, what will hurt me the least? And just like that, your entire life becomes risk-averse, small, predictable, and dead. You don't chase the life you want. You avoid the pain you fear. Third consequence, contaminated connection. Suffering isolates. Not physically, necessarily, but emotionally. You start believing no one can understand you. Or worse, that people are threats, not allies. You read into silence as rejection. You interpret love as a trick. You see kindness and wonder, what's the catch? You sabotage intimacy because closeness feels unsafe. You push people away because their presence might awaken a part of you. You've buried too deep, and so you stay alone not because no one loves you, but because your suffering has convinced you it's easier that way. Then there's the fourth consequence, maybe the most tragic: numbness disguised as peace. At some point, when suffering becomes too much to bear, your mind finds a loophole. It shuts down. You stop feeling too much and start feeling nothing. You're no longer weeping on the floor, but you're not dancing in the sun either. You're not exploding with sadness, but you're not overwhelmed with joy. You become flat, and society applauds you. You seem calm, stoic, mature, but it's not peace. It's emotional starvation. It's the absence of pain, only because you've also cut out the possibility of bliss. This is the quiet epidemic: people who aren't living, just functioning. Suffering hollowed them out, and now they walk through life like ghosts wearing masks that smile. Final consequence: reality distortion. You begin to see the world not as it is, but as your suffering needs it to be. This is confirmation bias. The brain seeks evidence to support what it already believes. If your suffering taught you, "I am unworthy," you will only notice moments that reinforce that. A compliment becomes suspicion. A rejection becomes proof. A failure becomes destiny. You bend the world into the shape of your deepest wounds, and suddenly, life feels hopeless, not because it is, but because that's the only version your brain knows how to recognize. Let that sink in. You're not suffering because of what's happening. You're suffering because of what you expect to happen. Because suffering has become your operating system. You don't just react from it, you see through it. And so long as that lens remains unexamined, nothing will change. No amount of money, no partner, no achievement, no medication, no move to another city. Nothing will fix the core infection until you confront this. You are not broken, but your lens is. You're not flawed, but the framework you're operating from is soaked in outdated pain, and every decision you make within that framework keeps leading you deeper into the same trap. So here we are. You now see what your suffering has done to you, not just emotionally, but neurologically, relationally, spiritually. The good news? Anything learned can be unlearned. Anything constructed can be dismantled. But first, you must rebel, not against the world, not against your past, but against the false reality suffering has tricked you into believing is truth. So the question becomes, are you ready to break the spell? What if freedom is not something you find, but something you remember? You were not born suffering. You were born awake. You were born without a story. And then the world handed you one. They named you. They told you what to fear. They showed you how to hate yourself. Politely call it humility. They taught you how to abandon yourself and call it adulthood. And piece by piece, you became someone else. But rebellion doesn't start with rage. It starts with clarity. Because once you see the prison bars, once you realize they were never locked, you don't need to be saved. You just need to stand up. Let's burn this into your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are the one watching them. That one idea, if lived, not just understood, can dismantle years of suffering. It begins here. Next time you feel the familiar storm rising, panic, shame, dread, don't suppress it. Don't fight it. Just watch. Say, this is fear. This is pain. This is memory. Name it without becoming it. This is what the mystics and philosophers have always known. What Rumi meant when he said, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. What the Buddha meant when he taught, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. They weren't offering poetry. They were offering weapons for war against illusion. Because the real rebellion is not loud. It's internal. It's when you stop identifying with the storm and start watching from the stillness underneath it. Here's a radical truth you've never been told. You don't need to heal to be free. Healing is not a prerequisite for peace. Peace is the space in which healing becomes possible. You keep waiting to fix yourself before you can feel joy. You keep delaying your life until you're whole, but you are already whole. It is the belief in your brokenness that needs to die. The rebellion is this: you stop trying to become someone and start unbecoming everything you were never meant to be. Start with silence. Just 5 minutes a day. No distractions, no affirmations. Just sit. Let your mind convulse. Let the discomfort rise. And don't touch it. That silence is not empty. It is the graveyard of every false story you've ever believed. Watch them come. Watch them die. Don't interfere. It will feel like madness at first, because your ego will panic. It will beg for stimulation. It will claw for identity. But if you persist, something miraculous happens. You begin to see through the performance. You begin to taste freedom. You realize, I am not my failures. I am not my shame. I am not the voice in my head telling me I'm not enough. You are the awareness underneath it all. And awareness cannot suffer. It can witness suffering, but it is not the one bleeding. Once you live from that place, everything changes. You stop chasing things to numb the pain, because there is no more pain to numb. You stop needing people to complete you, because there is nothing missing. You stop fearing failure, because failure no longer defines you. This is not philosophy. This is liberation. And no, it doesn't take years. It takes a moment, a real moment, where you stop lying to yourself. Think of the rebels throughout history, not the ones with weapons, but the ones with clarity. Siddhartha walked away from wealth to find peace beneath a tree. Nietzsche rejected comfort to carve meaning from chaos. Krishnamurti stood before the world and said, truth is a pathless land. They weren't conforming. They were unconditioning. You don't need to become them. You just need to unlearn what isn't you. The final weapon in this rebellion? Radical acceptance. Not passive surrender. Not defeat, but the courage to say, this moment is what it is. And I will no longer suffer because I wanted it to be different. Because suffering is always resistance. To pain, to truth, to change, to now. Because suffering is always resistance. To pain, to truth, to change, to now. Once you stop resisting, suffering dissolves. The pain may still exist, but it no longer owns you, no longer controls you, no longer becomes you. You stop running, and you turn inward. And you find beneath the noise a space so still, so vast, so unshakable, that no trauma, no loss, no failure can corrupt it. That space is you, the real you, the one who was always watching, waiting, now. Can you feel it? You're not broken, you're awake, and waking up hurts at first, but then it heals everything. Now that you've tasted rebellion, one question remains. What is the final truth waiting beyond all this? It's easy to think this journey ends with some grand answer, a final insight that clicks everything into place. The mind craves that closure, a neat little phrase to tame the chaos, to wrap suffering in a bow and call it transcendence. But truth, real truth, doesn't soothe. It dismantles. It doesn't whisper sweet affirmations. It rips the ground out from under everything false and asks if you're willing to fall. So fall with me, not physically, but inward. Right now, let go of your story. Drop the victimhood. Drop the survival narrative. Drop the justifications, the past, the what they did to me. Drop the name, the gender, the roles. Drop even the spiritual identity you've crafted, the seeker, the healer, the wise one. For one terrifying, beautiful moment, let go of everything you've believed yourself to be. Now ask yourself, what remains? What's left when the story collapses? When the ego dies? When there's nothing left to protect, to prove, or to achieve. Silence, stillness, yes, but also presence, pure awareness, the space between thoughts. The watcher, the one who has never suffered because it was never in the story to begin with. And that is you, not the you others named, not the you who failed, who succeeded, who tried, who cried, not the you who suffered, but the one who witnessed it all. You are not the waves. You are the ocean. You are not the storm. You are the sky. And you've always been here, silent, waiting, unchanging. This is the final truth. You were never suffering. You were suffering's observer. It was never you that was in pain. It was the image of you, the story grappling with illusions. The mind hurts, the body aches, the ego bleeds, but the awareness, untouched, eternal, free. This is not a metaphor. This is a direct, living truth that every awakened being in history has pointed to. But we miss it because it's too simple. It's not found in temples or doctrines or perfect lifestyles. It's found in the gap, the empty, holy pause between the breath in and the breath out. It's in the moment before a thought arises, in the space after a tear falls, in the instant before you react. That space is your true home. You've searched for peace everywhere, in books, lovers, gurus, accomplishments, but it was never out there. It's here. It's this. It's you without your name. And once you see this, suffering becomes a ghost. It may still knock. It may still pass through, but it has no foundation to cling to because you've remembered what cannot suffer. The final truth is not that life gets easier. It's that you realize you were never meant to carry any of it. You don't need to manage life. You don't need to win. You don't even need to heal. You just need to stop pretending you are the one who suffers. All suffering, at its core, is a case of mistaken identity. You think you're the thought. You think you're the wound. You think you're the fear. You are none of it. And when you live from this realization, not just understand it intellectually, but embody it moment to moment, you become untouchable. Not invincible, not numb, but free. Because even when the pain comes, and it will, you know it's not you. You can cry without drowning. You can feel without collapsing. You can lose without breaking. Because you are no longer within the story. You are the light behind it. And with that light comes an unbearable beauty. The kind that makes you laugh and weep and sit in awe of everything you once cursed. Because now you can see clearly. The people who hurt you, also suffering. The mistakes you made, beautifully human. The tragedies of your life, not punishments, but initiations. Pathways back home. You begin to love not romantically, not sentimentally, but existentially. You love life as it is. Even its sharp edges, even the uncertainty, even the heartbreak. You don't need it to be perfect anymore, because you are no longer resisting what is. And that is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be fully without fear. You've arrived. And yet, paradoxically, you've always been here. So now the final question, what will you do with this freedom? You could go back to sleep, rebuild the ego, re-identify with the old wounds, rejoin the drama. It's tempting, it's familiar, but you won't, because now you've seen it. You've tasted the truth, and even if you forget, truth doesn't forget you. It will return in the silence, in the stillness, in every breath you take when you're not trying to be something else. This is not the end of suffering. This is the end of your identification with it, and that changes everything. So if you give me 2 minutes, I won't fix you. I won't save you, because you don't need fixing, and you were never lost. But I will remind you that what you are cannot be broken, that your suffering was never the enemy, it was the teacher, and that the truth, when finally faced, is more terrifying and more beautiful than anything you've ever imagined. And now that you've faced it, you will never suffer again. Not in the way you used to. Not in the way that controlled you. Because you've remembered, you are not the flame. You are the light. You are not the storm. You are the sky.